Good morning. Looking at a few verses from Psalm 91 this morning, thinking about the word abide. Psalm 91 starts, and I do use the Revised Standard Version. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High, who abides in the shadow of the Almighty, will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler, and from the deadly pestilence he will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. He who dwells, the person who dwells in the shelter of the Most High. And then the picture is of a bird, of the wings of a bird. That picture comes up several times in the Bible of a bird under whose wings the young birds find shelter and rest and safety. And that is the place of safety for us. Living, not visiting, but living in the shelter of the Most High. Abiding, not popping in for a cup of tea and a biscuit, but abiding in the shadow of the Almighty. Jesus talks about abiding as well, doesn't he, in John 15 when he likens himself to the vine. I am the true vine. And he says, abide in me and I in you. And if we abide in him, then we're fruitful. For without him, we can do nothing. Abiding is very important. There are some people who visit with God, who spend a little time with him, perhaps on a Sunday morning or perhaps at a Bible study or prayer meeting. They have a visit with God. But most of their life is spent living their own way, doing their own thing. I think it was Brother Lawrence, an ancient monk. I don't know what year he lived in, quite a long time ago. But he talked about practicing the presence of God. That whatever he was doing, he was conscious of God's presence. He never left God's presence when he was washing up or when he was working in the garden. Whatever he was doing, he wasn't just conscious of God when he was in chapel at prayer or when he was reading his Bible. He practiced, he's called it practicing the presence of God. That's a very strange thought, very strange idea, because it's not about sitting quietly and not engaging with anybody else and focusing on God all the time. And that would turn us into a hermit. That's not what it's all about. But there is this wonderful thing of being conscious of God's presence all the time. We know it comes from faith, really. Our faith tells us that Jesus said he would never leave us nor forsake us. When he said, abide in me and I will abide in you, he was promising to always be there. And this is where we have to counter our feelings with our faith. We don't live by feelings. We shouldn't live by feelings. We should live by faith. And our faith tells us the promise of God is, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And the pictures in the Old Testament of, say, the children of Israel wandering through the wilderness, God told Moses to put up a tent in the middle of the camp, and it was right in the middle of the camp. The camp was arranged all the way around it. And when they marched from place to place, the tabernacle, all the parts of the tabernacle were carried in the centre, with half of the tribal groups going first and half going afterwards, because it was symbolic, showing that God's determination is to live in the middle of his people. And The new covenant is about not living with things that are imposed from outside, with rules and regulations, but living with the presence of God within us, the Holy Spirit within us, abiding in us as we walk with God. The person who dwells in the shelter of the Most High, who abides in the shadow of the Almighty, will say of the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. With God at the centre, and us abiding with him, staying under the shadow. This picture is, of course, pre-Jesus coming and pre the promise of the presence of the Holy Spirit. So it gives the picture of God outside us, overshadowing us. But the new covenant brings God inside, into the centre of our lives. But both are true. We are constantly in the presence of God. He is wherever we are. He is everywhere. And being aware of his presence, why would we fear anything? Something suddenly may come into this secure place, and perhaps a snare arises. There's a temptation to something. And as if we bring all our thoughts captive to Jesus, any decision making of how we use our time, what we do, every decision in our life should have a God element to it, because we live for him. Morning, noon and night, we live for him. We abide. We don't visit. That's something to think about today. How can you practice the presence of God more? How can you be more? You can't increase the amount of time that God spends with you, because he's promised to never leave you nor forsake you. But you can change how you think about God and how you understand his abiding in you. Jesus said, I'm the vine, you are the branches. You are permanently connected with me. You can't be disconnected. If you would get disconnected, you'll die. There'll be nothing for you to do. We stay connected, and the life of God flows through us as we abide in the vine. It's worth spending some time thinking, what does abiding look like? How can I be more faith conscious, less feelings controlled than I am at the moment, to the glory of God? Have a great day. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.